Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you stopped by today. Now, I really hope you don't mind it. I got a new fridge and I feel like it's a little louder. I won't know until I get to editing this video, so if it's really annoyingly loud, I'll try my best to edit out the sound of it, but there's only so much I can do. But anyways, let's get started on today's project. What I'm going to be working on is just a really cool hybrid that I thought of. I want to make a raptor that is also a leopard gecko. Anyways, let's get started. Okay, so my idea is to go with more of a raptor body and add gecko features to it. I figured that would work out a lot better than if I went the other way around and did a gecko body with raptor features. That might be like a little harder to work with. Anyways, I'm going to start on the clay pieces. I'm working on the clay head first, and then we'll have some hands and some feet. So right now, I'm just trying to cover up my lump of tinfoil with a nice thick layer of clay and get a basic shape down for our gecko raptor. So I'm going to go with more of a flat, wide head to get that gecko style into the face, but I still want to add more of an expression that looks more raptor-y than anything else. Now for the glass eyes, I really didn't have anything too gecko shaped, so I decided to go more raptor with the eyes. And I also had these really pretty colors to work with. These were basically the largest eyes that I had, and I felt like really large eyes were going to work better on this piece than going really tiny. So I'm going to get my eyes placed, make sure they're both nice and even with each other. Last thing you want is one higher than the other. It makes the expression really weird, unless you're going for that. But I'm going to get those placed, and then I'm going to start building up clay around them to make the eyelids and just kind of work with the expression a bit more. After that, I adjusted the shape of the head just a little bit by kind of squeezing and squishing it around just to change it up a little bit, because once I added the eyes, it needed to just be adjusted a tiny bit. And then I'm going to start adding the other features like the nose, the mouth, and then maybe a few bumps on the top of the head to add some scaling. Nothing really too fancy. I'm going to go with more rounded scales and just kind of make it look like there's a bunch of circles and dots and stuff. And then once I'm done adding a texture to the face, I'm going to clean up the edge around the base of the head, and then we can bake our clay head for about 45 to 55 minutes at 275 Fahrenheit. While that's baking, I'm going to work on the hands and feet of our raptor. So for this, and to give it more of a gecko theme, I'm going to have the ends of the toes rounded, and I'm not going to add claws except for those one really large raptor claws on the feet. So everything else is just going to be kind of rounded and soft. So for the hands, I'm going to start off with a wireframe that's pretty simple. It has 3 digits, and I'm going to add a little bit of clay to the middle where all the wires are combined, and then I'm going to also add balls of clay to the ends of each wire to make the tips of all the fingers. Now for me, I find a pre-bake at this time really helpful. You can save your progress and not have to worry about bumping the ends of the toes. And then what we can do is we can fill in the rest of the wireframe with clay. So I did about a 20-25 minute pre-bake at 275 Fahrenheit, and then once everything's cooled, I'm going to start covering up the rest of my wireframe with some strips of clay and just kind of blend everything together. I'm going to add a little bit of texture to the rest of the clay, just go over it lightly, and then I'm going to put these in the oven as well for about 45 to 55 minutes at 275 Fahrenheit. Very similar to the head. Now for the clay feet, I'm going to be doing a very similar method, except the shape is extremely different. So I have a wire frame just like the hands. These also have 3 digits. One is extended to have a claw though. So I'm also going to start by covering up that portion of the wire frame where all the wires are combined, and then I'm going to add balls of clay at the ends of our wires for the toes. The only thing different with this is the toe that I'm going to have a claw on. I'm going to have that ball of clay a bit lower, that way I can have some of that wire frame inside of the claw. So I'm going to get those placed, do a small pre-bake, and then we're going to start adding the rest of the clay to the wire frame just like the hands. Now a tip for making two-legged creatures like my Raptor Gecko, that way they can stand on their own, is 1, make the clay legs kind of the heaviest part of the body. It really helps with balance. And then 2, making the toes long and kind of spread out to have more surface area to balance on. Those really help it to balance so you don't have to use the tail as a third kind of tripod leg. Anyways, I have my clay legs done. I'm going to bake those real quick, same time and temp as the other clay pieces, 275 Fahrenheit for about 45 to 55 minutes. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get everything primered and start on the painting. So I'm going to be making my Gecko Raptor a very light yellow, so I'm going to start by getting everything painted that color first. After I have everything primered, I'm going to start by painting the head. So I'm going to add a little bit of a brighter yellow to the top of the head, and then I'm going to go for more of a warm, almost skin tone orange for the underside of the head, just to kind of change it up a bit. I'm then going to mix up some watered down gray paint and start adding some shadows and marking out where the markings are going to be on the face. So these are going to be kind of like the lighter versions of the markings, and then we can darken them up more with some black paint. For this, I'm not trying to make any particular pattern or anything. I'm trying to be very random to make it look more natural and organic, and I'm trying to keep away from making it look symmetrical or anything. I just want to try and make it look really realistic. I find with some markings, if I make them too even, it just kind of looks odd, especially with spots. Lastly, once all the paint has dried on the face, I'm going to scrape away anything that has gotten on our glass eyes. I really don't pay attention to how much paint gets on glass eyes because it's really easy to remove, so they get pretty messy. So I'm going to get those cleaned up, and then we're going to start working on the feet. For the feet and hands, I'm also going to add a bit of a brighter yellow to the tops of them, and then that kind of oranger, more warm color I'm going to use at the tips of the toes to kind of darken them and to just kind of make them stand out a little bit more. I'm also going to add some spots, not a whole lot and not really large ones, just a couple small ones here and there. And then with the feet, I'm going to paint those claws. So I'm going to go with kind of a light gray, and then the underside of the claw, I'm going to go with a black. Now with all my clay pieces, once the paint is dried, I resin over everything to protect our paint. So I'm going to let those cure, and while those are curing, we're going to start on sewing and getting everything ready so we can put our doll together. So this is the pattern that I drew out to make our Raptor's body. I've left it as simple as I can, but I do have a couple sections that are going to be different colors, so I have those broken up, mainly the body. Now I realized that I said we're starting on sewing, but I kind of forgot. We kind of need to dye everything first. So I'm actually going to lay out all my fabric pieces and we're going to start dyeing them. So for this, I'm going to add a bit of a brighter yellow to the backing of some of the pieces just to kind of brighten it up, obviously, and add a bit more color. And then we're going to mark out all of our little spots and stuff that we're going to have on our gecko raptor. And just like the spots that we did on the head, I'm going to have a lighter gray spot first. I'm going to let everything dry because those are going to kind of bleed together. And then I'm going to go over them again and make darker spots. And the reason I'm waiting for everything to dry is I don't want the darker spots to bleed into the rest of the colors. So I'm going to have to wait for everything to dry to kind of speed it along. I did use a heat gun to kind of help it. And then once everything is dried, we can start doing our sewing. So I'm going to start with the sides of the body, and the portion that I wanted to be a lighter color, I've got separated. So I need to sew those two pieces together first. Then I'm going to take the pieces of fabric that are for the inside of the legs, and I'm going to pin those together and sew down the fronts of the legs. Then I'm going to take the fabric for the arms. Each one has an inside and outside piece. I'm going to pin those together and sew down the fronts. Once those are sewn together, we can then attach them to the body. So I have a section where when we were adding the two pieces of the body together that I left open, and I'm just going to sew that in place right there. Once we have the arms in place, I'm then going to take the fabric for the neck and the fabric for the tail, and we're going to add those in place. So I'm going to pin the neck pieces to the very front, I'm going to sew those in place, and then I'm going to do the same thing to the side pieces of the tail. After that, we're going to take both sides of the body and we're going to sew them together. So I'm going to start at the top where the neck is. I'm going to work my way down to a specific spot, kind of right before the back legs. And then the tail has a top portion that we're going to sew in place. So we're going to sew that in place and then continue going down the rest of the tail. So right now we have pretty much the entire body sewn together, minus the belly piece, which we're going to add once we start putting the doll together. So let's get started on putting our doll together. I have a wire frame and we're going to start adding everything to it, starting with the fabric for the body. So I'm going to drape the fabric over the body and run the wires for the arms and legs through the body. I'm then going to take our clay head and we're going to glue it to the end of the wire for the neck. We're going to give it a little time to dry, and then we can take the fabric for the neck and glue it around the base of the head. Once we have that in place, we can then take the strip of fabric, which is the belly, and we can glue it to the underside of the head. Then we can start sewing and closing up our body. So I'm going to start on each side of the neck and just keep going down, sewing a little bit, stuffing, sewing a little bit, stuffing, until we get to right about at the end of where the legs are. Now I realized that I made my belly piece a little bit too long, so I made some adjustments and I cut off the portion that goes onto the tail, and I'm going to sew that in place on its own. So we're going to leave that separate from the rest of the belly piece for now. And then I'm going to stuff the tail and then put the wire for the tail through it. So I'm just going to get that in place and then we can work on our back legs. So for the back legs, I'm going to take the clay pieces for the legs and I'm going to attach them to the wire frame with a thinner gauge wire. Once I have our clay pieces in place, I can then take the fabric for the legs and glue them around the bases of them. We're going to let them dry a little bit and then we can stuff and close up the backs of the legs. Now before we close up the body, I did a test to make sure that my Raptor can stand on its own, and the wireframe seems a little weak, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a reinforced frame inside the body just to help it out a little bit. So I'm going to run this inside of the body and then we can close up the rest of it. I'm also going to add a little bit of weight to the tail to help it balance as well. And then I'm going to work on the arms. So I'm going to take our clay hands, I'm going to add those to the wire frame, and then we can take the fabric, glue them around the bases just like we did with the feet, stuff and close those up too. Now the last little bit of detail that I want to add to our gecko raptor is I want to shape that tail a little bit and make it look a little bit more like a gecko tail. So I'm going to take my needle and thread and I'm going to kind of sew along the sides and add a bunch of more tucked in spots and just kind of shape the tail a little bit more. Okay guys, and here is our Leopard Gecko Raptor. I had so much fun with this project. I am in love with his chubby tail. There's just something about it that I can't get over. And then his feet. Just love him. Also, like most things, if he sells really quick, I will probably make plans to make different ones, different color variations and stuff, because I just like this idea and I hope everyone else does. So yeah, there's a bunch of different gecko species that we could do raptors of. Also, I've been trying to get back into like making artwork for my RedBubble. Most people probably don't even know I have a RedBubble, but it is linked down below. And I did a little drawing of him. So I've got that on there along with a bunch of other artwork that I've been trying to add to it. I might like get rid of some of the older stuff because it's just a little bit dated and I feel like I've improved a little bit, so I kind of want to just kind of revamp everything. So yeah, check that out. Also, while you're down there, if you're curious on a bunch of different art supplies that I like to use, I got a bunch of links down there too for you. If you buy anything through these links, they are affiliated, so it does help support the channel. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!